An episode of The Simpsons was the subject of a 3-page memo delivered by Fox censors in 1997. Everything was crystal clear. The whole thing is unfit for broadcast. They desired its permanent obliteration. In the episode, a well-known director provided the voice for a character. It was the first cartoon to ever dare touch that subject. No scene was spared from the scrutiny of Fox's standard staff. However, the authors disregarded all cautions. In the hopes that leadership would change, they continued with the show nevertheless. The subsequent events stunned everyone. The music video featuring the band won several awards. Examine Fox's attempts to conceal it carefully, though. The Simpsons didn't exactly sneak into theaters in December 1989 when it debuted in its entirety. It swung in with a family that didn't behave like TV families were meant to: 4 fingers and yellow skin. Bart disobeyed. Homer was not in charge. Marge was nervous. Lisa wanted to know. Maggie did nothing but gaze. It was hard. It lacked sweetness. Some folks were really uneasy due to the fact that it was chaotic, noisy, and otherwise unpleasant. Bart Simpson had already surpassed all other American youths in terms of banishment by the time 1990 had even begun. School administrators began to ban t-shirts with his image and statements such as "I'm Bart Simpson. Who the hell are you, and underachiever and proud of it, man." They said that his disrespectful behavior was harming children and that he had no place in their community. Someone said he wouldn't fit in with a polite group. Someone else complained he was teaching the incorrect things. In detention, they preferred not to deal with those who referenced Bart. However, the children's resistance became even more pronounced when the volume of the adults' voices increased. The chief executive office was also entangled. First Lady Barbara Bush was forthright. The Simpsons were the most ridiculous thing she had ever seen, she said in an interview from 1990. George H.W. Bush, her husband, went even farther. He expressed his desire for American families to emulate the Waltons rather than the Simpsons. A subtle conflict began with just single line. Bart said, "Hey, we're just like the Waltons. We're praying for an end to the Depression, too." The show's response was nasty, hilarious, and lightning fast. In an instant, the Simpsons had enemies at every level of society. The fury wasn't detracting from the show, though, something the critics failed to notice. It was actually strengthening it. Creator Matt Groening later said, "The early seasons had no sacred cows. Nothing was off limits. If something looked too perfect, too fake, too clean, they poked it. And America kept watching." Even Fox, the network airing the show, kept its distance in some ways. The Standards and Practices team, also known as the censors, were constantly watching. Usually they just asked for small changes, tone down the profanity, tweak a word here or there. But sometimes the writers went too far and they knew it. One moment that crossed a line came in 1992 during season 4 with an episode called A Streetcar Named Marge. It was a musical parody of the Tennessee Williams play, and in it was a song about New Orleans. The lyrics described the city as home of pirates, drunks, and ... and the city that care forgot. The moment it aired, New Orleans erupted. City officials were furious. Residents wrote letters. Newspapers called it slander. The Simpsons staff had to act fast. In the very next episode, Bart was shown writing, "I will not defame New Orleans," over and over on the chalkboard. That was their apology. Sort of. Showrunner Al Jean later explained they weren't attacking the city, just parodying the play. But the lesson stuck. Jokes can travel farther than expected, sometimes too far. Still, the show didn't pull back. In that same season, they took a jab at Washington, D.C. with Mr. Lisa Goes to Washington. The episode showed Lisa getting disillusioned with politics after seeing corruption up close. It hit hard. Some people in real-life politics weren't happy, but the writers didn't care. Producer Mike Rice later said that anytime The Simpsons traveled to another city, another country, that place would get angry. It became a pattern. The Simpsons went somewhere, made a joke, and someone got mad. But the audience kept growing. The jokes weren't cruel, but they were sharp. And they always pointed up, never down. What made it all more bizarre was that this wasn't a gritty HBO drama or a late-night roast. It was a cartoon, a primetime cartoon with kids in the audience. A cartoon that by its fourth season had already taken swings at schools, presidents, entire cities, and even foreign governments. And all of it was wrapped in bright animation and that familiar Do theme song. But under the yellow paint was something smarter. The Simpsons wasn't just making fun of America. It was holding up a mirror. And what people saw in that mirror often made them uncomfortable. That's why the backlash kept coming. But even as it won awards and became a staple of Sunday nights, the show was constantly pushing up against the edge of what the network would allow. One episode nearly didn't air at all. It was called Homer's Phobia, and it quietly tried to do something no animated show had done before. Talk about homophobia and do it through the eyes of Homer Simpson. The story seemed simple. Homer meets a man named John, voiced by filmmaker John Waters. He's funny, charming, and openly gay. At first, Homer doesn't notice, but once he figures it out, he panics. He starts acting strange, worried that John might somehow influence Bart. It's clumsy. It's awkward. And it's exactly the kind of reaction people had in the real world back then. But by the end of the episode, Homer is forced to see past his own fear. John saves him. The moment is honest. The message is clear and it's funny. The episode would go on to win an Emmy. It won a GLAAD Media Award. People still talk about it today, but at the time, Fox tried to stop it. The censorship memo didn't ask for a few changes. It slammed the entire concept. The showrunners, Bill Oakley and Josh Weinstein, later said it was the harshest pushback they'd ever seen. Fox's Standards and Practices team sent them 3 full pages of objections. Anything that used the word gay, anything that hinted at gay identity was marked as a problem. The memo ended with a sentence that didn't leave room for debate. The entire subject and content of this episode is unacceptable for air. That could have ended the episode right there, but Oakley and Weinstein decided to risk it. They ignored the censor notes. They pushed ahead with the script, the voice recording, the animation, everything. Their hope was simple. Maybe by the time it was done, the network's leadership would change. And it did. By the time the completed episode came back for final review, there was a new censor in place. The mood had shifted. What was once considered unacceptable suddenly became okay. Just like that, Homer's Phobia was approved for broadcast. It aired in February 1997. It made people laugh. It made people think, and it very nearly didn't happen at all. John Waters, who voiced John in the episode, later said something that stuck. The only way to change anyone's opinion is to make him laugh first. That's what the episode did. It didn't shout. It didn't preach. It just used Homer Simpson's fear and confusion to show something real and maybe to change a few minds. But that moment also showed something else. Fox had its limits. Even when it allowed a story like Homer's Phobia to go through, it wasn't easy. And it wasn't over. Later that same year, The Simpsons took on another hot-button issue, guns. In the season 9 episode, The Cartridge Family, Homer decides to buy a handgun. The script written by John Schwartz-Welder didn't take sides. It just showed how reckless Homer could be with a gun in his hand. He points it at people without thinking. He jokes about it. At one point, he even points it right at Marge's face by accident. The episode tried to stay balanced, but the censors weren't laughing. On the DVD commentary, the creators admitted it was one of the most heavily scrutinized episodes they'd ever done. Fox worried it would be seen as too casual about gun violence. Still, the network let it air in the US. No scenes were cut. Maybe they felt that Marge's constant anger at Homer's behavior was enough to send the right message. But things weren't the same overseas. In the United Kingdom, Sky TV refused to air the episode. They thought it made gun use seem like a joke. Years passed before it ever showed up on British television, and even then it was edited. The final gag, where Marge keeps Homer's gun in her purse and winks at the camera, was removed. In the UK version, it's clear the gun is gone. In September 1997, The Simpsons opened its 9th season with an episode that felt fun and harmless at the time. It was called The City of New York There Homer Simpson, and it showed the whole family heading to Manhattan to find Homer's car, which had been booted in front of the World Trade Center. The episode was filled with silly jokes about the Twin Towers, how long the elevator lines were, how crab juice was the only drink around, and even a throwaway insult where someone told Homer that all the jerks are in Tower 1. It didn't feel like anything serious. It was just a cartoon making fun of New York the way cartoons often did. People loved it. The episode even won an Emmy for a Broadway-style rehab song called You're Checking In. No one gave a second thought to the towers in the background. But then everything changed. On the morning of September 11, 2001, the World Trade Center collapsed after the deadliest terrorist attack in American history. Almost 3,000 people died. And suddenly, a Simpsons episode where Homer goofs around at the foot of the Twin Towers didn't seem funny anymore. Within hours, Fox pulled the episode from syndication. It was gone from reruns, pulled from rotation, and quietly shelved. Nobody on the Simpsons team fought the decision. Showrunner Al Jean said there was no point arguing about it. The jokes that once got laughs would now only cause pain. It stayed off the air for 5 years. When it finally came back in 2006, it wasn't the same. They had cut out the Twin Tower scenes, edited lines, and removed the jerks in Tower 1 bit completely. The cleaned-up version became the only one shown on TV. The original stayed buried, but that didn't stop the internet from digging. A few fans noticed something strange in one scene. There was a brochure that read New York 9 with the Twin Towers standing right next to the number. When you looked at it quickly, it looked like 9/11. People started claiming The Simpsons had predicted the attacks. Conspiracy theories spread online like wildfire. Aileen called it bizarre and completely accidental. Bill Oakley, who co-wrote the episode, explained that $9 was just supposed to be a funny, low price, and the towers were simply used to show the New York skyline, nothing more. But the damage was done. For some, the image felt too eerie to ignore. Even though the episode was eventually restored in its original form on Disney+, the uncut version never returned to network television. The towers had become too painful to show. And that episode, once loved and awarded, now lived in the shadow of a national tragedy. But it wasn't the only time The Simpsons had to step back because of real-world events. Just months before September 11, in February 2001, the show aired an episode called Day of the Jackapes. In it, Sideshow Bob hypnotizes Bart and turns him into a suicide bomber to kill Krusty the Clown. Back then, the idea of brainwashing or suicide bombing still felt like dark comedy. But after September 11 and after other global attacks, that kind of joke started hitting too close to home. In the UK, Sky One banned the episode completely starting in 2002. It didn't air again until 2004. It took 2 years for the network to feel ready to put it back. And when it did return, the context had changed. Viewers no longer saw it as a joke. They saw the risk of real children being exposed to something too raw, too soon. Even years later, small things caused big reactions. In 2014, the episode The Wreck of the Relationship became the first Simpsons episode to get a TVMA rating in the US, meaning it was considered unsuitable for anyone under 17. The reason, a minor character briefly gave the middle finger, and a bong was shown on screen. It wasn't graphic. It wasn't violent. But after years of post-911 sensitivity, even a small moment like that triggered a stricter warning. Fox didn't want to take chances. They labeled it with the highest possible rating just to be safe. Fans didn't understand it. Most of them thought the rating was way over the top. But it was a sign of the times. Tragedy doesn't just change people. It changes what people can laugh at. It changes what networks can show. It changes the meaning of jokes that once felt light and harmless. The Simpsons never meant to hurt anyone. But sometimes the world changes so much that even a cartoon has to stop and think. In 1995, Bart vs. Australia aired and things got messy. Bart's phone prank leads the family down under, and what follows is a flood of jokes about kangaroos, giant beers, and a chaotic parliament. The Aussies were not amused. Some found it funny, but others were furious. Newspapers called it offensive. Politicians complained. Mike Rice, one of the show's longtime writers, later said it was condemned in the Australian Parliament, but no one banned it. If anything, the outrage made it more popular. People embraced the chaos. Fans even joked about renaming their currency to dollars, a term lifted straight from the episode. That episode set the tone. If the Simpsons travel, expect international backlash. Japan took it much further. In 1999's 30 Minutes Over Tokyo, the family lands in Japan and ends up on a wild game show. The jokes flew fast. Hello Kitty factories, seizure-inducing cartoons, and Homer wrestling as sumo champion before tossing the Emperor of Japan into a dumpster. That last gag broke the limit. Japanese networks refused to air the episode. It was never shown on TV, never included in DVD collections, and stayed off streaming for years. Even countries nearby, China, Hong Kong, South Korea, avoided airing it, possibly out of shared cultural sensitivity. And Japan wasn't done. A year later, in 2000, Season 11's Little Big Mom hit another nerve. In it, Bart and Homer fake having leprosy as part of a prank. In Japan, that topic isn't a joke. The episode was banned outright. The idea of laughing about a leper colony or showing disease in any comic setting was too much. That one never aired either. Then came Brazil in 2002. Blame It on Lisa might be the most explosive Simpsons episode in international history. The family visits Rio de Janeiro and suddenly viewers saw rats, wild monkeys, kidnappings, slums, and crime around every corner. Brazil's tourism board snapped. They threatened legal action. The president himself, Fernando Henrique Cardoso, called it a distortion of reality. The image of Rio as a jungle filled with dancing orphans and ransom demands stung deeply. James L. Brooks, one of the show's executive producers, had to publicly apologize. Still, Brazil banned the episode from TV. For 10 years, it didn't air. When it finally returned in 2012, it came back edited. Some scenes were softened, others redubbed, monkeys vanished, kidnappings were toned down. It was still The Simpsons, but a gentler version for Brazilian screams. China's response wasn't just loud, it was structural. In 2005's Go Japan, The Simpsons traveled to China so Selma can adopt a baby. The episode jokes about Maodong being a little angel who killed 50 million people. It flashes a sign in Tiananmen Square saying, "On this site in 1989, nothing happened." It mocked communism, adoption. Rules, censorship, everything. China didn't just block the episode. A year later, they banned all foreign cartoons during prime time. The timing wasn't subtle. Many saw it as a response to shows like The Simpsons pushing too far. And when Disney Plus launched in Hong Kong in 2021, that episode was missing. Then in 2023, One Angry Lisa aired. During a fitness class, Marge sees a scenic shot of China while the instructor mocks labor camps, Bitcoin mines, and children making smartphones. Disney removed that episode from its Hong Kong library, too. No warning, no explanation. It was gone. 2 episodes, 2 removals, and 1 clear message. Don't poke the bear. Germany had its own line. In Season 5's Cape Theatre, Sideshow Bob dresses in a Nazi SS uniform as part of a disguise. It's just a gag, a throwaway joke in a chaotic episode. But German law is clear. No Nazi symbols in entertainment unless it's serious historical work. The episode was pulled. For years, it didn't air on German TV. Eventually, an edited version was allowed. The joke was cut. The rest stayed. Italy had a different problem. In 2017's Halloween special, Treehouse of Horror Kaiso, Homer eats himself bit by bit. It's gore played for laughs. Italy found it revolting. They banned the episode for 2 years. It only aired late at night in 2020 after quietly slipping onto streaming platforms. New Zealand delayed another Halloween episode for showing a Kingsman-style church massacre parody. Their TV authority felt it was too violent for the early evening slot. It aired later under tighter ratings. Even the Czech Republic weighed in. In season 33, a maid Maggie parodied The Godfather. Maggie becomes a mafia godchild. There's a baptism scene in a Catholic church. Czech networks refused to air it. They didn't give a reason, but many guessed it was either the mafia content or the religious jokes. Sometimes the censorship didn't need to be explained. It was just understood. In Latin America, The Simpsons is a household name, but not all episodes survived the journey. In 2008's E Pluribus Vigum, a joke calls Argentina's former leader Juan Perón a dictator who tortured people. The line angered many, especially Peronists who viewed him differently. Networks pulled the episode across several countries. It wasn't until streaming arrived that the episode quietly returned. Disney Plus included it and censored. The internet made banning harder, but it also made outrage faster. Over the decades, The Simpsons didn't just become the longest-running animated show in history. It became something bigger, a mirror for culture, a machine for predictions, and somehow a myth maker. It started with yellow cartoon people in a small American town. But by the time the internet grew up, The Simpsons had started growing legends of its own. People didn't just watch it anymore. They whispered about it. And one whisper was louder than the rest. In 2010, a strange little horror story started spreading on forums. It was about a hidden Simpsons episode that never aired. People called it Dead Bart. The story claimed that during season 1, Matt Groening had written an episode where Bart dies. Not just a joke or a gag. He falls out of a plane and dies. Then comes a slow, surreal spiral as the family mourns at a graveyard, their faces twisted in grief. Eventually, their bodies rot and decay, shown in disturbing time lapse. Everything about the episode felt cold, empty, wrong. The Post claimed that when someone asked Groening about Dead Bart at a fan event, he went pale, scribbled down a secret web address, and walked away. The story said the fan downloaded the episode from that link and saw it all. The lost footage, the rotting corpses, the unbearable sadness. The file was cursed. The story spread fast. The thing was, Dead Bart wasn't real. It was fanfiction, a creepypasta, a made-up story designed to sound like a secret. But it felt so believable because The Simpsons had already trained us to expect the unexpected. If any show had a forbidden episode buried in some Fox vault, this was the one. The myth spread everywhere. YouTube videos tried to reconstruct the lost scenes. Reddit threads analyzed the clues. And then in 2018, season 30 opened with an episode called Bart's Not Dead. It was a wink, a joke aimed straight at the rumor. Showrunner Al Jean confirmed it. The title was a reference. He's definitely not dead. Jean said he's very much alive and lying to his mother. That line killed the myth, but also kept it alive because once something becomes folklore, it never really dies. The idea of banned Simpsons content still hangs around. There have been real moments where Fox drew a line. A segment from the Cartridge Family had to be cut in the US because it made light of soccer hooligans. It showed up later on DVD. In The Simpsons Guy, the crossover episode with Family Guy, there was a joke where Quagmire assaulted Marge. Fox refused to air it. The scene was too dark, too off-brand, too far. Seth MacFarlane was reportedly furious. But Fox didn't budge. They knew what The Simpsons meant to people. They had to protect the brand, even from its friends. Then there was Myanmar. When The Simpsons movie came out in 2007, it was banned in Burma. Not for anything said or done, just for the colors. Yellow and red together were linked to rebellion. The ruling Huna didn't want them on screen. The whole movie was blocked. It sounded like satire, a government banning a cartoon because of colors, but it was real. The Simpsons had always made fun of censorship. Now it was living it. Even inside the writer's room, there were lines that couldn't be crossed. John Schwarzel once wrote a line where Homer says he'd have to sell his soul to the devil just to pay the cable bill. And God, I'd like to see that. Fox's censors shut it down. Too dark. Too close to the edge. Years later, the idea came back. This time in a Halloween special with Flanders as the devil. If it was non-canon, it was okay. Sometimes the writers pushed the envelope, then folded it back in again, but nothing tested the limits like the Banksy couch gag in 2010. The famous street artist storyboarded a brutal opening sequence showing sweatshop labor making Simpsons merch. The scenes were bleak. A chained unicorn used to punch DVD holes. Dead-eyed workers. Animating scenes. It was a savage satire of the show's own production chain. Surprisingly, Fox aired 95% of it. They only asked for tiny edits, no rice hats, no direct national symbols. Most of it stayed. People couldn't believe it. The Simpsons had mocked its own network and gotten away with it. Looking back, the show's long history feels like a map of changing times. In the early 90s, just showing a family that didn't get along felt like rebellion. Bart was banned from school t-shirts. The Bush family took public shots at the show. But by 1997, things had shifted. Homer's Phobia introduced a gay character and almost got blocked by censors. It aired. It won awards. The rules were changing. By the 2000s, international backlash was common. A joke about monkeys in Rio made headlines in Brazil. A scene where Homer joked about strangling Emperor Akihito got banned in Japan. The Simpsons poked fun at everyone, but not everyone laughed. The show had always been fearless, but now it was causing diplomatic incidents. That didn't stop them. It only proved they were still doing something that mattered. After September 11th, the mood changed again. Old episodes that showed the Twin Towers were quietly pulled. Bart joking about being a suicide bomber was removed for a while. Some episodes had to carry stronger warning labels. What used to be edgy became dangerous. And yet, the show kept going. In one episode, E Pluribus Vigum, they made a joke about Argentina's politics. It got banned in Argentina. Later episodes poked at China's censorship and were blocked from streaming platforms. Somehow, The Simpsons kept slipping under doors, mocking the guards on the way in. People sometimes ask if the show has ever gone too far. That depends on who you ask. When Stark Raving Dad was pulled in 2019 because of Michael Jackson's connection, fans were divided. It had been a beloved episode, but the creators felt the world had changed. James L. Brooks said it wasn't censorship. It was them choosing to remove a chapter. It felt like burning a book, and he hated that feeling, but said it had to be done. That decision showed how even the creators were evolving. The Simpsons wasn't just a show anymore. It was a living document. And sometimes documents get edited. The legends, the bans, the deleted jokes. They all tell one story. The Simpsons has never stood still. It reflects the world. It bends with it, pushes it, and sometimes gets shoved back. And in all those moments, real or imagined, aired or lost, it becomes more than just TV. It becomes the story of who we were, who we are, and who we're trying to be. Told by yellow people in a town that never ages. Where every couch gag still reminds us that anything can happen.